And so who did he pick as his running mate? Joe Biden, an old, like almost 40-year experienced guy from Delaware, of all places, who just has a lot of experience. That's what Lyndon Johnson was. And he picked Lyndon Johnson too as his vice presidential candidate because that's a good thing to do in politics. You pick, if you're from the Northeast, you pick a candidate from the South to balance you out so you can get that Southern vote, you know. So you're not just a crazy Yankee, you know what I mean? You're a guy who cares about all of America. So it should be interesting when Hillary Clinton runs for president. Who's she going to pick as her running mate? Is she going to pick a Southerner? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Take a lesson from Kennedy. So Lyndon Johnson, just a few pictures. I love these pictures. The Texans family, I'm just going to show you a few things. There's his wife. His wife was named Lady Bird. Anyways. Yes, glamorous. Maybe not as glamorous as Jackie Kennedy, but still kind of glamorous for an older woman. I feel funny saying that. All right, so you see all these pictures here, and yeah, you know, it's. Oh. And there's his daughter actually getting married and stuff. So a contrast to President Kennedy. Now Johnson was an interesting man. This was a guy who, again, remember, I did state before that Kennedy was a little bit inexperienced in working with Congress. Johnson was the exact opposite. Since he worked in Congress for like almost 30 years before he became vice president, he knew how Congress worked. He knew who was in power. He knew who was on certain committees. He knew who he could mess with to get things done. And he would give you what I call the Johnson treatment. Here's the Johnson treatment. The Johnson treatment is basically being overpowering and intimidating. Using your size, which he had, and using it to basically intimidate people, physically as well as mentally. Okay? Now, in your life, you probably have people that you deal with on a normal basis that are straight annoying. You know what I mean? Like people that get, have you ever dealt with a close talker? You know, like someone that just has no concept of personal space. That's Johnson. Show you a picture. He invaded personal space. He often went nose to nose with people. You know, like, I'll show you some pictures in a second. But he was that guy that just, he would do whatever it took to get a bill passed. If that meant physically threatening you, like, I'm going to kick your, you know what, he would do it. If he needed to be nice to you, rub your back, make you feel good about yourself to get what he wanted, he'd do that too. He didn't care. He's kind of like the Malcolm X of presidents, by any means necessary. You know what I'm saying? Except he wasn't an African-American Muslim. He could be very persuasive and personable rather than elegant and charming. And there's just some really funny stories about LBJ. Let me show you some pictures. Now that one's not too bad, you know, like that's a reasonable distance, right? But it gets worse. This is actually in 1965 when he's telling a guy in the civil, you know, they're trying to pass a bill through Congress, the Civil Rights Bill, Voting Rights Act of 1965, and he's just getting up in the senator's face, and he's like, dude, you son of a bitch, if you don't pass this bill, you know what I mean? And the guy's like, oh. Physical intimidation. I love this one. Yep. To do this, you have to just not care anymore, right? Like, you don't care what people think of you. Like, whatever. I'm just gonna go for it. Maybe they just couldn't hear him. I don't know. Some other pictures. Touching this guy, cajoling him, making him uncomfortable. Yeah, people, sometimes people do that to me for some reason. I have more stories than that, but yeah, there's definitely a lot to be said when someone does that. It's like, makes you feel a little creepy. But he was probably, in terms of presidents getting things done, I would say very, very successful in getting things done. And another reason he got things done was because he had a huge majority in both houses. I mean, the Senate and the House were pretty much mostly all Democratic. Not all Democratic, but mostly. And so he was able to push through things. And so he resorted to these tactics when a vote was needed on a program. Now, what were his programs called? His programs, here's some other pictures of him. He got shot. He liked to show off where he got shot. Like, check him out. He's looking at his tummy. He's like, look at me. I got shot. That's why you should pass this bill. Ooh. Enjoying his dog. All right. Enough of the Lyndon Johnson worship. Come on here. Hey, little boy, what would you like? Anyways. So what was he known for? Well, first of all, remember, every president has a catchphrase. Kennedy is the new frontier. Harry Truman is the fair deal. Johnson is the Great Society. To put it bluntly, the Great Society is a series of social programs that provide for people, whether it's old people, disadvantaged people. The Great Society consists of a lot of pieces of legislation, okay? In many ways, a lot of those pieces of legislation are still with us today. It's a huge expanse of the federal government. During Johnson's term, that's the definition of what a Democrat is. Somebody using government to help people. That's the promise of what Johnson is doing. That's the Great Society. However, at the same time, America is embroiled in this conflict overseas that has changed from a simple conflict to an all-out war. And his presidency will forever be scarred by the escalation of the Vietnam War. Escalation meaning more and more troops sent into Vietnam and essentially bringing down his presidency so that he can't run again. Yes. Police action. I like it when people do this. It's so funny. Okay. Yes. I went to Starbucks. Okay. Whatever. Okay. Yeah. So let's get to some of the big pieces of legislation that he passed. The things that are with us still today that Johnson passed, besides and we talked about the Civil Rights Acts, right? The Voting Rights Act of 1965, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, those were two tremendous things that he passed. But these things are still with us and they bear discussing. Medicare. Basically, let me do all this stuff and then we'll talk about it. Medicare was a single-payer medical system where basically the government is the insurer, okay? Single-payer means that the government provides the health insurance, and it's for the elderly, okay? The way Medicare works is when you become 65, and at that point you're elderly, okay, I guess, you apply for this thing called Medicare. And Medicare means that you can go see any doctor because the doctors have to abide by the Medicare rules. And the Medicare rules is you can't deny people, care based on age. So if you're over the age of 65, you apply for Medicare. It's a government-sponsored program to allow you to see any doctor and get any service you need. Okay? Your grandparents have it, right? Like my parents have it because they're like 65 and getting close to 70. So Medicare pays for your prescription drugs. Medicare pays for your doctor visits, okay? And it's supposed to guarantee that you can go, again, keep your doctor, go see any doctor you want to, but government pays for it. Medicaid, though, is health care for the poor. So if you're under a certain income level, you can get this thing called Medicaid, which allows you to go to certain doctors who honor Medicaid and allow you to pay, like basically pay for your doctor visits. Okay, so healthcare for the poor and the elderly. This is similar to what we know today as Obamacare. Obamacare is something that hasn't worked totally great so far, but Obamacare is kind of like an expansion of Medicare, except it's Medicare for all. Okay, and that's the idea there, that nobody should not have health insurance. Because back in the day, before 1965, old people did not have access to medical care. You had to do it through insurance or the old system of actually paying for medical care. Like if you had money, can you imagine going to the doctor and they're like, I broke my arm. Oh, that'll be $150. That's the way it used to be, was called fee for service. Like you would pay for it out of your own checkbook. They didn't used to have health insurance back in the day. That all changed, starting with Medicare, and then eventually we're here where we are today. But these are probably some of the two most important things that he did. This is the funniest thing. Forgive my language here, but I found this picture, and it was kind of funny because a while ago, like when the anti-Obamacare people were out protesting, they were really worried that they were going to lose their Medicare. And it's so funny, apparently people don't study history because it says, keep government out of my Medicare or my Medicaid. I'm like, dude, government pays for your Medicaid, you knucklehead. It's kind of funny. And they can't spell either, so that, I don't know what that tells you. America's full of crazy people. Other things that Johnson did, think big government now. In terms of cities, schools, and immigration, he created this thing called HUD, Housing and Urban Development, which basically provides homes to low-income people. Throughout any city, you'll see public housing. In the city of Fresno, there's plenty of public housing that is provided based on grants from this government organization. In a way, what Johnson was doing was he was trying to declare war. His phrase was war on poverty. And your textbook will talk about that. The war on poverty. Great society, war on poverty. It's all interrelated. To try to house the homeless, for example. Also to improve education with this thing called the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, which is supposed to equalize the funding between rich schools and poor schools so that poor schools can get money for all kinds of improvements, okay? That's also very important, going back to housing and urban development, it's kind of funny. Apparently, in the city of Fresno, we have a huge homeless problem. I don't know if you guys know. There's like 2 or 3, I forget how many, I think it's like 2,000 or 3,000 homeless people. And what's the government's solution? Make them move. And then when they congregate somewhere, make them move again. And then after that, move them some more. Right? Apparently, studies have shown that if you were to just provide the homeless with a home and all of the medical care that they need, that it would be far cheaper to do that than to actually keep doing what we're doing, which is, make them move, or if they need medical care, they call the ambulances, right? The hospitals, which cost a lot of money. Like you could actually just house them and then have doctors there